I see it as a huge love letter to that golden age of musical comedy. And I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't thought that. I don't think any of us would have.
Broadway actress Ann Harada recently visited the Broadway Maven.
So, welcome to This Is Your Life, Ms. Harada. It's really exciting to have you here at the Broadway Maven.
Thank you so much.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
What is it like to have a conversation with a puppet on stage?
Well, this is something that we talked a lot about because, you know, you're not supposed to be looking at the puppeteer ever. We're just looking into the eyes of the puppets, right? Because the puppet is the character.
Right.
And Jord Gelber, who played Brian, and I really struggled with this for a long time because our acting training, we were so used to looking into the eyes of our fellow actors. And so to not be able to do that, to be prohibited from doing that, and then just staring at the puppet was a bit of a transition. But you know, by the end of it, we were completely used to it, and it was second nature.
Okay, so critics loved the way you did that, and audiences loved the way you did that. But I understand that Sesame Street didn't love so much the way you interacted with the puppets. Is that right?
Not me personally, I don't.
I thought I heard an interview that you had tried out for Sesame Street, and they didn't.
Oh, that, yes. Well,
Yeah.
I had auditioned to be the new storekeeper.
Okay.
And I was not very good at it. You know, you have to be really quick on your feet and with a great sense of like improv. And the guy who got the part was my best friend. So I was not upset about it at all.
Now, how did you find the Avenue Q project? How did that come across your?
This is so crazy. Well, you know, Bobby Lopez and Jeff Marks had written a few songs for the BMI workshop. And they just needed somebody, they needed an Asian actress to come in and sing like a couple of lines, and everyone's a little bit racist. And so basically they just asked their classmates, does anybody know an Asian actress? And my friend, Amanda Green, who I'd gone to college with, raised her hand and said, I know somebody. And she gave them my phone number, and that's how that happened. And from that day on, I was always Christmas Eve.
Oh, terrific. Now, you are of Asian descent, of Japanese descent.
Correct.
Your character,
Yes.
and she has troubles with her R's and her L's, as many Japanese immigrants do. Was that ever uncomfortable for you to be laughing at that?
No, because for me, the whole point of that character is that she has to have an accent. There has to be something obvious that makes her different from everybody else. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, there's no point to the song. Everyone's a little bit racist. That there has to be something obvious, and yet, you know, it's something, you know, it's not like people don't have accents. I don't feel like I was being hurtful or that it was insulting. You know, there's a lot of people who have accents, and it doesn't mean they're any less bright or, you know, anything else. It's just that's sort of how it is. And I just wanted to have that character, you know, be there for a reason. If she spoke perfect English, there'd be no point to
Right.
her being in that song. So
Now, I know a lot of times when a Jewish person plays an elderly Jew, they draw on like their grandparents' Yiddish accent or something like that. Were there any relatives that you drew on to come up with that accent, or?
you know, I wish I could say there were, but no, not
No.
really.
Okay.
I cut her out of whole cloth. And,
Well, you did a great job.
you know, my Japanese teacher in high school thought that I had the worst Japanese accent she'd ever heard. So I just tried to live up to that.
Trying to live up to it. So having created a role, there are lots and lots of Christmas Eves who've done that since, in community productions, on Broadway, off Broadway, all over the place. To what extent have you had conversations with them? Do they turn to you, or do you really not talk to other Christmas Eves?
If somebody finds me on Facebook
Yeah.
and messages me and says I played Christmas Eve, I'm usually like, let's go have coffee.
Oh,
You know,
wonderful.
it's like it's not a big deal. I feel like, you know, if somebody wants to meet me and talk about it, let's do it.
Awesome.
I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of Christmas Eves and to work with a lot of ex-Christmas Eves. And it's really gratifying to know that your role has somehow made it into the canon, and there's lots of us floating around out there.
It certainly has. That's terrific. You have played in Pacific Overtures many times, and
Just once, just the once.
well, many performances.
Yes, many performances.
And we got to see a bit of that in the clips reel that I showed at the beginning of class. How did Sondheim's death affect you?
Oh, well, it was devastating. I think, for everybody, it was like losing this idol that had sort of always been there in your life. And then to just suddenly realize like that was it, and we weren't going to get any more shows out of him. Not that we really thought we were going to get very many more shows out of him, but there's always a hope.
Yeah.
It was a massive loss. I mean, I remember doing Pacific Overtures because I thought this might be my last chance to meet him and work with him, And of course, he really wasn't around rehearsals very much.
Yeah.
But it was still thrilling to have him sit in and, watch what we were doing. And he was the master. There'll never be anyone like him again. And
did he give notes?
To live in his lifetime is pretty special.
Did he give notes on the production?
Not to us specifically, no.
Okay.
He probably spoke to John Doyle, and John filtered them and then tried to be gentle about how he got the note.
That must have been so exciting to have him in the room while you were
yes,
creating.
It's very exciting,
yeah. And I've watched the 90th birthday celebration many times, and it really is a highlight of that series of vignettes. It's right up there with Ladies Who Lunch in my
oh, thank you. Well, theoretically, it was his favorite of his songs, Someone in a Tree.
Yes.
So to be asked to do it was, obviously a great honor for us. And it was thrilling that people liked it, honestly.
Visit thebroadwaymaven.com to learn about a free online Broadway appreciation course every Monday at noon and 7 p.m.
So let's talk about Schmigadoon.
Okay.
One of my friends won't watch it. He won't see it and he's a big Broadway guy, but he says that as he understands it, it reinforces the stereotype that musical theater is cheesy and something worthy of bemusement or even contempt, and he doesn't want to buy into that. How would you react to that kind of complaint?
I don't see it like that at all. I see it as a huge love letter to that golden age of musical comedy. And I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't thought that. I don't think any of us would have. Look who's in that cast. They're all, musical theater stars who care very much about the canon and care very much about theater history, and nobody would have done it if in any way we thought we were being disrespectful. Absolutely no way in hell. But I have to respect that person's opinion, and I'm sorry they feel that way, and maybe they'll come around sometime, because if they just gave it a try, I think they would see we're doing exactly the opposite of that. Yes, of course, there's a song about corn pudding. There's a song, there's like a lot of kind of like,
oh no, not
numbers.
A Dream Ballet. I love that.
Right. Oh, no, not A Dream Ballet, but we don't do it.
Right.
But it's also, I just think so. Do we not see how like being in Schmigadoon like changes the leads, the contemporary leads, and how it's a better, like, they feel loved and supported, and it's a beautiful community, and I don't know. There's something about the power of music and dance that's actually transformative. And I think that's the point of it.
And the music itself is so good. It's so spot on to what musical theater is. And yet it fits the characters and it fits the situations. When you can do a parody, I mean, I guess Avenue Q is the same way, but you can do a parody where they are musical theater songs and it fits the situation and people can just have a rollicking good time.
Also, and it works if you know the source and if you don't know the source.
Right.
People were able to sort of figure out where my song was all about, even if they weren't familiar with What's the Use of Wonderin' from Carousel, or, Bill from Showboat, those kinds of, oh my man kind of songs.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's fine. It works on every level, we're just trying to reach as many people as possible.
Now, your character is in love with a gay man. This is not the first time that's happened. Has it
Boy,
happened?
you're telling me.
Has it happened to you?
Yes.
So it's fun to be something that you related to. Okay. How about a second season? Are we going to see one?
That is the hope.
Oh, I hope so. I really hope so. Okay, we have a lot of St. Louisans in my class. I don't know why I'm a St. Louisan, and you are a Muni favorite. Not only do we see you just about every summer that
I
there's-
wish every summer. Gosh.
Yeah, but you get great roles. You got Rosie, you got Mrs. Wormwood. They just, Mike Isaacson cast you in some terrific stuff.
They've
And
been incredibly kind to me at the Muni and so cool about offering me parts that I ordinarily wouldn't get seen for or the opportunity to do. To be able to do Electra, honestly, I was thrilled.
that's a stripper in Gypsy for those of you who don't know. So what was that like, stripping?
Super fun. Super, super fun.
So what's it like to perform outside?
Oh, it's horrible in the summer in St. Louis. It couldn't be hotter or more uncomfortable, basically. So of course, I remember being in 42nd Street and we had nothing to do but like run off and change our coat all the time because we were pretending we were in Chicago and New York and like, oh my God, we're dying, and I barely had anything to do. I wasn't even like a dancer who had to change clothes in 10 seconds to get into the we're in the money costume. I mean, it's all about you're sticky and you're hot and you've got to get the next costume on. And that's the whole point of the Muni, I think.
Right. Well, I've been going since I was 4. My very first musical theater experience was seeing The Wizard of Oz at the Muni, and The Wicked Witch was played by Margaret Hamilton.
Oh, how wonderful.
Which could not have been better cast. I saw Annie there and just grew to love it and still go. So it's really exciting to see you there and to see you here. For my students who are interested in musical theater careers, what's a good way to find a mentor?
I don't even know how one would go about doing that anymore. I was young so long ago. Do you know what I mean? What happened to me was when I was in college, I was graduating from college and a Broadway producer who had graduated from that college called the college off, like the theater office to go, is there anybody who'll be my intern next year? And I was like, I will, and I went for the interview and she said, okay, you're fine. And, but this was like back in the 80s. It was a long time ago. And I learned so much about the industry from working in her office. I learned every aspect of theater, basically. And I learned what I didn't want to do, which was to become a producer. But I also learned that, there were lots of different jobs in the theater that I was interested in. And one of them was being an actor. But up until that moment, I just didn't realize how many moving parts were in the theater game. I was like, I could work backstage. I could sew costumes. I could take tickets. I could work in a box office. I could, there were all these things. And as well as I could be in casting, I could be in advertising. I could be, so it was fascinating. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity. But how do you find it now? I don't know.
Do people come to you and ask for your mentorship?
I guess so. Because what am I going to do? Show you how to make a self-tape. You know how to do that.
Right.
That's all kids do now anyway. It's all any of us do.
Right.
Can I give you advice? Of course I can give you advice. Does any of it matter? Probably not. Because I think everybody has to have their own path. Everybody's going to anyway.
Yeah.
You'll meet people, you and your friends. I would just basically my number one piece of advice is make theater with your friends. Keep your connections up from school because those people are going to be your base, your home base as you're trying to get acclimated to a new city. It's
Uh-huh.
really important to have like a core group of people that you can count on.
Uh-huh.
And when nobody else it seems like nobody else cares about hiring you, you guys can hire yourselves. You'll make your own theater and you'll do your own thing.
Right.
That's important.
Right. So before we open it up for questions, I just have to ask you about one thing that doesn't have to do with theater, but you went to high school with Barack Obama?
Yes, I did. He was 2 years ahead of me. So we were not close, and our worlds did not collide. Unlike High School Musical, the basketball team did not hang out with the musical theater people. So we really didn't cross paths. But his grandmother worked at the Bank of Hawaii with my mother.
Oh,
So my mother was a very early adopter of Barack Obama. And she was right, as she so often is.
wonderful. So Alex is our co-host, and he's going to help me look at hands, and we'll call on some people, and we'll see what students will also keep an eye on the chat to see if there are questions in there that would be helpful. Alex, do you see anybody or see anything in the chat?
Yeah, we got Gerald Rosen.
Okay, Gerald.
Yes, I think I unmuted myself. I'm just curious, did the real Gary Coleman ever come to see the show?
The real Gary Coleman was approached to do the show. I believe the real Gary Coleman might have seen the show, but we did not get a chance to meet him.
Okay.
He even considered doing it once it became successful.
Hi, Ann and David.
Okay.
And I have just a question. Have you ever found that your ethnicity has helped or hindered you getting any roles these days?
All the time. When I was first starting out, non-traditional casting was not really a thing.
Okay.
And I remember trying to get, I moved to Chicago for a couple of years to try to get work out there, because my boyfriend, who is now my husband, was living in Chicago, and I moved in with him to sort of test that relationship. And I thought, well, I'll try to get jobs in Chicago, but nobody was interested in me. As a concept in Chicago, because it was the early 90s and they hadn't really turned their mind around to non-traditional casting. And I remember going to, an appointment for Oliver. And they just looked at me like, well, who are you going to be? Who could you be in Oliver? I'm like, Oliver, I can be anybody. You know what I mean? But they just couldn't expand their mind at that point. I'm sure it's different now, of course.
Right.
I hope it's different now.
Sure.
But there's lots of shows. There's lots of shows I can't be in because I'm Asian, just because I'm Asian. There's,
right.
For instance, Ragtime is one of those shows where there's just no place for an Asian person. You either have to be one or the other to kind of fit in that world. But I don't worry too much about it. I think that now people are so much more open to non-traditional casting, and certainly for me, so many of my parts have been non-traditionally cast, that I just think people just sort of look at me and go like, oh, character woman, as opposed to Asian character, you know what I mean?
Right.
Ms. Harada, do you think that's because of something in the wider society or because of something that happened in the theater? How do you explain that change?
I'd like to think it's something in the wider society, because that's the whole point of the theater, is that we're reflecting our society, right? And that people are kind of able to kind of roll with it more than they used to. They're not so literally minded that it's like, no, you can't be brother and sister, that kind of nonsense. In my personal kind of like understanding, for me, if I see a contemporary show where people are not specifically related to each other, I get really angry if it's all white, an all white cast, unless it's set in like Iceland or something. I mean, there's just no reason for that. Like a contemporary show set in, a big city, like a bunch of people at work, there's no reason for everybody to be white. That's insane, but because that has been the theatrical default for so many years, many companies just kind of can't seem to get out of that unless there's a specific play that it's like, and then this specific character has to be this or that. Then, And I'm just like, that's to me is the number one thing we've got to change, is we've got to change that default mindset so that casting is just more inclusive all across the board for, things that I'm not saying like, let's push the envelope on every single thing. And, everybody, we should all be mixed race families. It doesn't matter. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Okay. But
Do you have a dream role that would be pushing the envelope? Is there somebody you'd like to play?
I don't know that we'd be pushing the envelope. My dream role is Sally in Follies.
Oh.
And I think that would be completely possible and plausible,
Mhm.
Because they don't have to be one thing or the other. It's not in the script.
Uh-huh.
But that's what I've been thinking about.
Can
My
I just
class is
quick?
doing
can I
Follies
get-
week
oh,
from
sorry.
Monday for those of you who want to know more about this show. Sure, go ahead, follow up.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up, Anne, because I did ask if it helped or hindered. Have you ever appeared like in any traditional, let's say, Asian roles, like in The King and I or Flower Drum Song? Could you comment on that?
Nobody wants me for those shows. I've
Are you
tried.
serious?
I'm deadly serious.
Oh, geez.
I was in an early workshop of the revised Flower Drum Song,
Uh-huh.
the one that came, the one that was a few years ago. David Henry Wrong rewrote the book.
Mhm.
And he had written me in as a character who was like the daughter of the Madame Liang.
Mhm.
And that character was completely superfluous and deserved to be cut, and she was.
Okay.
So I was not involved in that. And then in The King and I, again, I go in for King and I's. I have gone in for King and I's, but nobody's ever interested in casting me in that show. For whatever reason, I'm too short. I'm too old. I'm too this, I'm too that. I'm too American-y. I'm too, I don't know what, funny. I don't know. But it has never worked out. And I have to be okay with that. Because I get plenty of work in other shows.
Marcy?
Hi, Ann. Good to see
Hi.
you again. Hey, always be grateful for the time you spent with us in like 2008 with our daughter, and you gave her really good advice. Like David was saying, like, what kind of advice do you give to someone who is thinking about going into musical theater? I think you told her to marry a rich guy.
Is that what I said?
I think you might have said that, but you said just love what you do. So, but I did have a question related to, I know you've been in TV like Smash and Schmigadoon. We were, talking about that, do you have a preference for working on a Broadway stage versus a different, the different mediums like TV?
No, I don't have a preference. It all has to do with the part and the production. As an actor, I'll always pick stage over every other genre because it's the most immediate connection to the audience. And your storytelling is completely dependent on your company. You know what I mean? It all happens in a finite amount of time and in one space, and you can control the narrative, as opposed to TV or film, where you do your scene, you show up, you do your scene, and you're like, okay, let's see what happens. Months later, after it's been edited together, somebody else has picked the performance they wanted from, you know what I mean? You have no control over it. You're just doing the work and hope that it turns out in something you like and it's good. But there's no sense of it at the time.
Right.
You're just sort of acting, like to the air, and then you're like, okay, I guess that was okay.
Well,
I don't know.
You've just given me a chance to say what I wanted to say to Broadway actors and actresses all the time, and I don't talk to them very much, which is don't go to Hollywood. We need
Well,
you.
it's not like don't go to Hollywood, David.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. This is why I take film and TV work.
Yeah,
I am responsible for my family's health insurance.
right.
And I tell you that the SAG health insurance is so far preferable to the equity health insurance. It saves me so much money. If I just made my living on the stage and had to get health insurance from that, it would cost me $15,000 a year extra to cover my family.
Wow.
And that is not the case in SAG-AFTRA. So just for economic purposes alone, I want and need to do film and TV work.
Understood. Thank you for that pointer. I won't be
But
as.
I also am devoted to the stage and want to return to it at all times,
So this one comes from Sharon Kirshner, who asks, is there anything you have booked in the future besides Into the Woods?
Yes. But I am not at liberty to just reveal that right now.
It was worth a shot. Awesome.
Anything currently playing on Broadway that you're particularly excited about?
I'm excited to see things that I haven't seen yet. I haven't seen The Strange Louvre. I'm really excited to see that.
Oh, okay.
I just saw Take Me Out and I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. Yeah, terrific. I just saw Funny Girl. I had the best time.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm
so
looking
much
forward to that one too.
detail. Yeah. All right. Well, Ms. Harada, this has been so great. I really appreciate your joining us. And here's another video I think you'll like.